Hi, I'm Henry Gordon-Smith, founder of Agritecture.com, and I'm here with Andrew Verhasselt, one of my contacts through the blog and a really amazing industrial designer who's developed HydroHarvester. How's it going, Andrew?
Hey, Henry. Thanks for sharing this with everyone, and look forward to talking about it with you.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You know, you reached out a while ago and you shared some of your ideas. I gave you a little bit of feedback and some guidance. You know, specifically, we're talking about domestic products for growing at home. You wanted to kind of design one, and I shared some of the resources from our blog, what we've been looking at, because there's so many. And you've really taken that in a really far direction. And so I want to share that with the world and show what you've done with this new idea. And we're going to get into that today. We're going to do some screen sharing. So Andrew's going to show some of his work and talk about the industry a little bit. So thanks for joining us, and let's dive right in. So, you know, there's so many different ways to solve this food security problem. That's something we're really passionate about here at Agritecture. So many different scales, right? You can look at aero farms, large commercial, a vertical farm. You can look at greenhouses. So many different ways to do it. What inspired you to approach this challenge from the scale you're looking at, which is a home solution?
Well, just first off, is really starting with the topic. I had to choose for my grad program. Really had to start with just a general topic, and I kind of explore the space. And I've always kind of been interested in what's going on in this controlled environment agricultural space, all the new stuff with indoor technologies, vertical farming ideas. Really kind of inspired me. Like, I really want to go into that for my final project for grad school. And I mean, I really have no idea where I'm going to end up. It just so happened I flowed into this kind of the more domestic space. But I think just maybe some of the cool ideas other people came up with kind of inspired me. And then I wanted to take that on my own direction and go further with it and give that back. So
great. So can you pull it up a little bit? Can we show the audience what we're talking about? Walk us through what you looked at, what you considered, and yeah, I guess give us a short overview.
Yeah, so most people probably on this side are really familiar with the general aspects of CEA, just higher quality. You can kind of control more of the crop. But it did a lot of the stuff you also have on your site. With the increased populations, how are we going to kind of increase some food demand? So this kind of really, you guys already kind of set a foundation for me, and as a lot of other people are trying to tackle this to look into. So really looking at the space for me, kind of just saw some different areas. I always like the idea of just the environments that you can kind of grow in. And there's already a lot of spaces that already can control that you can kind of implement that into. So there's a lot of those spaces, atriums and different things and buildings that already have a lot of inputs into it, because one of the problems I kept having is all the energy inputs that you keep going into with a lot of these like warehouse farms. That kind of bothered me. So if there's already places that you can kind of integrate into, so that's how I kind of went in, decided to start flowing into like kind of the home environment. I thought that would be an interesting market. And going on a bigger scale, some of the pillars of food security, I kind of noticed that we have there's a topic of called access to food. And one of the things that kind of declined are direct access, like at home to food. So that kind of connects those two, and you start combining these things, and that kind of leads into the direction of where I want to go. So I started looking into just some of the consumer products that were already out there, and then keep going through this process and see where I get to.
Yeah, I think you're really touching on some critical points here. I mean, first of all, from a physical perspective, you know, yeah, we do have places that are indoors. You know, humans spend 80% of their time indoors. That's already an asset. Why build a whole other facility or convert it when you can use those physical spaces where the climate is controlled? I think that's really interesting as an approach. And then certainly a lot of the problems that exist with the commercialization of these farms is labor, for example, and what's needed to kind of take care of them. So if people are growing at home and you're engaging them to do that, that really solves the labor problem and as well as that climate control problem to some extent, because they have a controlled environment there. So yeah, very interesting process. Tell us more.
Yeah, so once I kind of got set in the home space, there's about 3 areas of research that I needed to go through. The first one is particularly with the market research, see what's all going, products already out there in this space. What can I kind of learn from them, from some findings to make some insights? The second tier is actually growing myself. I did a lot of in-home growing testing, just really get involved and have some of those struggles to make sure that the end result would be realistic and practical. And then the last area of research was my users. I really at this point didn't know what my target market was going to be, but hopefully through the market research could kind of guide where I should aim for. And then I could really tone in for the users, so I make sure that it's more user-centered design and targets the right group semantically later on. So really, there's so many products out there. As you know, and I started making a lot of different just product benchmarking sheets and like 100 products, like in all these different categories.
Wow.
I started spacing them, putting them in the categories themselves of what kind of are similar and related, and just some things that stood out. But basically, I started looking at reviews of some of these products, what people liked about them, what they didn't. One thing at the time was refills were kind of expensive, and people weren't liking those. It's funny how this was conducted a year ago, and now it's changed. As you probably saw, that Click and Grow just reduced their seed prices significantly. So it's kind of interesting how this, kind of changes. But still, there's some idea of the expensive seeds. But looking in some different areas, and some more like gap analysis, I was kind of looking that there wasn't a ton of like modular units out there that you can kind of expand on. They're always individual units, and it's been pretty it looked pretty common based on reviews that people were wanting to expand off of them. So once they bought one, they're like, oh yeah, I want to buy another. But then they just had a bunch of these kind of scattered throughout their like house or on the countertop, and they don't kind of integrate with each other. So like that was definitely one area that I thought was interesting. Maybe you could have something that you could expand on and would actually look integrated into itself. But then also one thing that really struck out for me was just the product advertising, because a lot of them always showed kids in their the visuals. And I mean, I really like it because you want to get kids involved, but some of them products were a little bit big, like they're way taller than what the kids can even reach. How involved are they? I mean, they're just staring at some of the pictures, not actually engaged. So maybe there is a market if you start mapping it out to get maybe more youth focused, because STEM has gotten really popular, and some of the stuff is not super intensive that they'd definitely be able to pull it off and understand and maybe use themselves. So that was definitely an area I started leaning towards to kind of get a user down and targeted. So then I was looking at maybe how to gauge youth, particularly in agriculture with this technology in the home market.
So that's what kind of led you towards looking at youth and kids, is because you kept seeing them in those pictures and the form.
The pictures, all they just, yeah, with that and some of the connections, it all seem to focus into that. And I think it's really relevant just in long term overall too. I mean, get kids involved in some of this, and maybe they want to, I mean, you got to plant that seed somewhere into them if we want to get more people involved with this. So starting at that age, and maybe they can take this stuff further later on too. I think this is kind of exciting. So.
Yeah, I think that's totally true as well. I mean, you said there's 100 at least, or 99 at least. You know, when we reported first on these domestic products, I think a couple of years ago, we were around 40. You know, there's a lot of, there's just so many of them, and it's you don't really see a clear winner, right? There are people that are getting there, but they're not really getting that mass market appeal. And so when you think about the future of this, I'm wondering, I don't want to put this in these words in your mouth, but I'm wondering if you're kind of seeing this is the future, and maybe it's too soon for consumers to be growing a lot of food at home, and maybe the children and the youth, that is the only market, because they're the ones that are going to make those decisions and integrate into their kitchens in the future, make it part of their life. Do you believe there's a big enough market for adults today, or do you think that's kind of an uphill battle for people designing these solutions?
One of the things also to add on is that some of the products are so extensive and very pricey that people aren't willing to put a bunch of money up front if they're not sure if they want to test something. some of these are over thousands of dollars, some definitely less, but I really didn't see a market that people were going to want to go put down the money if they didn't even trust the system, if it's going to work, because people have tried some things before and they're kind of skeptical. So that's why it would be nice to have a single starter kind of unit and then it kind of expand upon.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also kind of an idea, I think, that what the expectations are, because I'm not sure, maybe more if this stuff gets more developed, but the idea that you're like going to supplement like all your food by growing it inside, I don't see that as being super realistic. At least right now, I feel like you can provide some of the plants that maybe you keep using at home or some leafy greens off and on. But I don't think it's right now, it doesn't seem like the market's there that they're going to try to do that based on the price per what it's going to cost to grow. And right now, I mean, most people are really conscious of cost, particularly like groceries and things, that it might not be as practical versus just getting involved and doing something. Like people spend a ton of money in gardening outside as more of a hobby versus what they just go and do that. So maybe it's just more the hobby area. Like you can see.
I think that's also a really interesting insight. You know, is it's not about producing your food at home necessarily or all of it. It's about the experience, it's about the education in the case of the kid, or it's about the hobby. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And certainly, yeah, if you look at the gardening market, people are spending a lot more on that than they are at farming at home. So it sounds like you're extremely thorough in this analysis. I think the viewers would be curious to see what you came up with. I mean, walk us through some more.
Yeah. So just some quickly on some of the growing research. I mean, there's key things I wanted to keep in mind. I've taken a lot of side horticulture classes, so I wanted to make sure the plants grow right and what's kind of involved. So there's some key elements within that. I did greenhouse tours and grew at home. One thing I kind of just kept getting into was kind of individual test units is what I kind of kept using, so I could start a trial and take one out versus having like a single container. Go back, sorry. Like if I was growing a bunch, I really don't know what nutrients are in the whole tank. I don't really have a ton of sensors. I was pretty much self-funding this on my own because it wasn't sponsored. It was just a self-owned project. So I started going towards these individual units and aerating them, and I had quite a good success. I could do different trials off and on. One thing I did notice, I kept using rock wool, was kind of my go-to for the growing media. And I really didn't cover it up. And it's kind of been common people to get some type of mold in there. And as kind of a side project, I just wanted to see maybe I could get rid of the media itself and you just place a seed in and see if it could grow. So one of the things I kept working on, just quick trials, I kept 3D printing some different things and trying them out. Until eventually I kind of got some to kind of work out nicely where I could like place a seed in. It would kind of filter with once the roots grow and go out to the outside into the solution. And it'd just be the right medium of air and water. So I want to propagate. So I kind of started implementing some other features that maybe this could be used later on in an application. And I just kept growing a ton of different things. I tried kale, butterhead lettuce, some different basils within that. So I could take some things from the growing side later on. But then this third area was just the users. So I specifically talked to like parents and teachers because they're around kids all the time, trying to find my age range of kids. So I'll try to go through this kind of quick. Yeah. But I found that maybe more of the preteen market is the more ideal space because they're getting more exposed to chemicals, but they're not at a certain age that they're going to be kind of more disinterested because once they got into the teenage range, they weren't kind of interested in some of these more gamey type things. They're more interested in more social things later on, sports and kind of getting into their relationships and whatnot, and not playing like much games as much. So there was kind of an area I started focusing on that, getting more feedback from teachers. So just did different interviews to find out what they were doing, a lot of different hands-on things in the classroom and what works. So taking all those, pretty much just take what I found to insights, and I started making some design objectives. So making it simple, intuitive, re-engaging, low cost, and integrated to environment are some examples. So all of these things I took from those categories to make design objectives, and then I moved forward for the beginning to come up with some different forms, which I've already kind of tested throughout with the plant trials. So kind of integrating more of these other elements into it to come up with a form. So I'll kind of go quickly. One thing I liked, since I kept using individual plant units, that I could easily take these off and they could like throw them in a dishwasher and whatnot. That would be a nice area once the plant's fully matured. And I like the idea of eliminating some of the tubing. So there's kind of these check valves. They're kind of in baby bottles and some other applications that maybe you have that below the bottle, and you could aerate it from below and eliminate some of the tubing and have a cleaner design. So that was kind of one of the areas I started with to come up with some different concepts. So one idea I really liked is just some modularity. One that maybe they kind of expand out as you go, and they're all part of like a system. You can add different attachments in, like different lighting or different setups. So some different ones. I ended up, I don't know, I kind of just moved forward with those into the form for these bases. And basically, here's what I ended up doing for the final design. You see here.
So it's still modular, it can expand, right? If you want to get multiple ones, you can attach them to it, but you focused on that individual plant design. And so
Yeah.
You could detach these pieces and clean them, right?
Yeah, and this still goes with feedback from even the market research of having a single unit to start with, and then you can kind of expand upon if you wanted more plants. And one area in particular is making this more engaging for like the youth itself. If you notice, a lot of these plants, with the hydroponic systems, the super cool thing is the roots. However, most of them, you can never see the roots. So I worked on these vases that would have kind of like a spinner in them. So you could spin it. One, that would be engaging for the kids to just look at. But
what do you mean that green part rotates within it? Oh,
so this.
So it hides it from algae, but you can show it. This hides
You can check your water level, and you can also just see what the roots are.
Cool. Yeah.
So you can kind of check the status of the growth. That's one area that kind of really worked on. This whole thing is kind of based on how water bottles are kind of made. There's always a lot of them now have the glass inside, but the silicone sleeve on the outside. And pretty much you can have the spinner placed on the top rim, and you can screw the cap in, and that would kind of lock it all in place. It's kind of what I focused on for the base design. But
I like the lights. It kind of reminds me of War of the Worlds, you know, those like tentacles going
Yeah, so with the modular kind of system, you can kind of put in different applications. So the lights, sorry, bouncing around. Pretty much there's really never got a preference on what kind of lighting people like, because you know there's like the pink, like red and blue LEDs, or the warm white or cool white lights. I mean, there could be applications where people could select kind of which ones they wanted if you obviously sold them the right certain wavelength within those, and they could kind of customize it as they wanted. So that would definitely be something I think is kind of unique versus having the fixed lighting.
Too, right? Experiments for the classroom or at home, you know, you can have some choices there. That's
yeah. So try to hit on a few more things. But yeah, some of the unique things, I try to integrate that raft thing I made from some of the research area, where this can set on the top of it and kind of float for a bit. And then once you pour the water in, there's like a gap below that can kind of fill its way in. Adding like kind of a flexible lip, because when you pour water, depending on your glass, that'll spill out. So if you also added like a flexible lip to the edge of the kind of cap, this could help prevent some of the leaking out, because you don't want to make a mess on the table also. So trying to think of all these different things that could happen with the system, and then adding that check valve below, and then you put on the docking system, and you can expand out as you want it in a kind of a linear form.
It's a very attractive product. It seems very intuitive, and I think it's very clear you took a lot of lessons learned from those other products out there. It's one of the reasons I really wanted to share it with people. So
maybe I'll run through these steps quick.
Yeah.
I guess if you wanted to see a user how they would typically use it. So one, you would fill it with water to get that raft floating that I talked about. Then you'd place the seed right there in the center of the raft that has a thin film of water in it. Technically, there need to be kind of an app developed with this that could kind of help guide the kids. One thing I noticed, a lot of the kids mostly already have tablets themselves anyways. So if they could kind of just sync with the system that they started to plant, this could kind of guide so they'll know when to add nutrients. So you tell them like, hey, add a nutrient pellet into the system. It'd be almost like fish food, a type of way of watching their plant. So the main step is keeping the raft afloat until the roots start setting in the system, because you don't want it to get rested and dried up. But I kind of made it so the water won't hopefully evaporate in time if they kind of forgot. But there's definitely some leeway in it. Once the roots are set, then you can start the aerator below, turning to more oxygenate some of the water. And then really just kind of wait for the notifications, and they can harvest when it seems to be ready for their system. The nice thing about the caps, when I kept growing with them, the plant always snapped off really well from that. So you could easily take off your produce, and then you can kind of clean out some of these root portals. And then you can throw that whole vase just in the dishwasher.
Nice.
And then you'd be set for another round once that's ready to go. So a lot of different ways to use it. I think is what's kind of exciting about the idea. So like, say you had like a 2-plant system, maybe you have a third vase in the window and you just keep cycling those every 2 weeks for a kind of a plant if you really were getting into it. So a lot of plug and play options I think would be kind of nice to have in a product.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there we go. And there's the kids.
Yeah. So that kind of gets the idea. They're definitely more involved in the products than just like staring at a plant in a little box. So kind of some visuals.
And so did you share this with kids or parents once the final design was decided? Did you get some feedback?
So most of the research I had to stay away just based on some like way the university rules are. I'd have to get more like waivers and whatnot, but I did get more like off the record feedback from kids. Like some of these, when I was doing some of these photos with them, they pretty much understood it pretty clearly on how it would work and everything. Nothing was super complicated that they didn't understand, because once they kind of learn something, they can master it pretty quickly, and already had some good feedback from them on that. But the next round for this really would be more some beta testing.
So walk us through the pricing. You said you had some pricing there you were thinking about. I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I really probably should have taken that out. But this would be like an ideal price point.
Yeah.
If you kept it under $100. I know realistically, if like a startup did this on my own, I know I probably couldn't hit that market. But I mean, people, once you're producing kind of higher end stuff, I mean, coffee machines are like $15 now. I know some of the technology, adding some Bluetooth and whatnot, will definitely get the cost up. But ideally, it would be nice to get something eventually to a price point within this range to kind of compete with some of the other products that were out there. And it's definitely, you're not comparing it directly to these, because they both all do different things specifically. So like obviously the Click and Grow, you have 3 plants, more herb-based plants they were growing. They're definitely, that one's more of a passive system. Mine is you only getting 1 plant out of it, but actually you're kind of getting some larger plants.
Yeah,
you can get more of the leafy greens in that system because you're providing a bigger platform with that. So it kind of differentiates on that end as well. I mean, realistically, maybe it starts out at $100, but.
So you looked at a bunch of different products in your research. Yeah, I guess that's a good slide with the cross section of the different options. But you know, what were some of your favorites, and what were some of your least favorites? Where it's like, what were they thinking? You know.
Yeah, I'll probably wonder, can I zoom in on this? Does that zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can kind of see one of my favorites. I was like, because I know this one industrial designer kind of did a project for his grad degree. This cloud farms concept.
Yeah, Bradley Ferrata. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've interviewed him before. I think it's a beautiful product.
yeah, that one really, because they're all the other ones. I mean, they're all obviously kind of like box forms, pretty much, and they make sense. This one really kind of, it always stood out because it's way different than the other ones that are kind of going on out there. That I really appreciated that one because it was so different, and just the way it looks, it's more sciencey and different feel to it. I really liked. Fortunately, that one didn't make it through on some funding. But that one, just the design, I think I really like that neat concept. But some of the other ones that always stood out, that Nutri Tower, that was always some interesting feedback, particularly when I was talking with parents. I was doing some card sorting activities on what their thoughts were, and that thing just lights up the room, and it always just stood out in what their reactions were. And not too many preferred that as like in the home, but it's definitely attention getting. And it was actually pretty popular when teachers like saw that because it looks kind of something, I don't know,
like a
scientific. Yeah, it looks like a scientific thing that people, maybe a classroom area.
The centralized lighting on that one is nice too, right? As opposed to some of the Tower Garden ones where the lighting's on the outside. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder how efficient that is. But I think that one is definitely pretty interesting. Gets your attention. But I mean, I do like some of the standard ones. Their models, pretty standard, is like the Aero Garden and the Click and Grow. I mean, I don't mind those. I do think if I was going to get one, the Click and Grow is kind of just a nice platform in the home.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, and the price definitely has gone down, so that helps a lot. So what about, you know, being as nice as you can? What were some of the ones that you're just like, from an industrial designer perspective, you think really missed?
Yeah, I don't want to critique them. It's going to bad feedback.
Oh, but I know you did it as part of your research, right? So you're doing a constructive way.
I don't remember what university they were.
This is Grove from MIT.
The Grove, yeah. It had some type of expensive wood, I know, on it.
Yeah, they were using a really nice. I actually have one of the original versions at home.
I mean, that one did not get really good reviews from some of my participants that they'd want that.
In what way?
Personally, I mean, it's really big. It just doesn't seem very, like, I guess, aesthetically pleasing, technically, to want in the home.
Yeah, it's definitely very attractive. It's like you're really going to want, some people don't like the white and the metal. They want something a bit more earthy looking.
Yeah, but I think it might need another round of maybe some form of development, technically, of how they can integrate it. But I assume it's a very efficient system based on the people that were putting it together.
Well, I think also they went a different approach, right? They tried aquaponics. Some of them are aquaponic here, but the majority of them aren't. That's a more difficult, form of doing this. So, some credit for that, for at least attempting.
Yeah, that's a very difficult system. I kind of stayed away from that.
Yeah.
Because that gets very complicated, trying to keep the fish alive and get the chemicals through. So yeah, props to them for making that happen. But this isn't the full list, but this is just some I picked out for this diagram.
Nice.
I think this, I don't remember the name of this one, but this one was very industrial designy, like how they went about doing it, how it turns to click in and add nutrients. I thought that was pretty neat for a window seal.
Yeah, I forgot the name of this.
It's Droponics is what they're called.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw this one pop up on social media a bit, and then not anymore. So I don't know what happened with that one, but that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, so a lot of these I did notice. I had a thing marked, like most of them are just getting funded on Kickstarter. So there's every week there's a new product I had found that I was trying to come up on Kickstarter. So yeah, I'll be curious how and how successful some of these come out to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy, especially when you think about the manufacturing, right? Like, you know that you got to get to a cheaper price, price that they're gonna see in the shop, and they say, okay, this is a toy, this is something educational for my kid, it's something that's under $100, and that price only happens if you have enough volume to manufacture. So it's this chicken and the egg, right? It's like, you want to design something great, but in order to design something great, it's going to be expensive at first.
Yeah.
Then you need people to buy that, and then you need to get it cheaper. It's really a tough business. I'm just curious. I don't know if you've seen the Plus Farm, a project that we've been working on. I don't know if you saw that at all, if you've been following the blog.
Not too much. That was I did see that towards the end of when I was collecting research, and I kind of just stopped back towards like August last year. I do remember seeing that starting to come about.
Yeah, it's pretty recent, but it's like, I don't want to plug it too much here. This is what this is about your product. But, when we developed the Plus Farm, and it's an Agritecture concept, we developed it as something that's DIY, something you could do on your own. It really focuses on the experience of building it, as opposed to just getting something that's, attractive. It's something that's sourced from local materials. So that's a totally different approach. But we noticed some of the same things that you did. I think your assessment of the industry, of this consumer market is really spot on and interesting. And I really wanted to showcase that. So I'm really glad you did. What's next for Access, or let's call it the home harvester, right?
Yeah. So really right now I kind of been tabled as I've kind of settled down from grad school, but I would want to keep moving forward with some of these little cap designs. Is pretty simple for me to make. I'd need just to test some of its flexibility, some aspects I wanted to implement into it. Because I think one area would be nice, as you kind of mentioned, the DIY market, that they're, based on how I was testing myself, if you could sell a little cap and maybe some like nutrients and seed kits, that they can just cut up a water bottle and try to grow something, would be kind of a starting point for this. And particularly with the teachers, because there's one direction I kind of decided, because I was interviewing teachers and parents, if I wanted to go straight into the classroom or more of the home. So I ended up going the home route, but the classroom area has some other criteria to look into, and I think that might be something to tackle as well. But a lot of the classroom does get restricted based on their standards. They're kind of restricted to, so they can't really do too many open-ended things. They kind of got to stay on their schedule, and a lot of those standards don't really hit some of this area. But there is kind of a few things that are coming in with plants and water that they could incorporate it. But
yeah, I hope that evolves a bit. I think it's really important that, that obviously you do too, that youth learn about food security, learn about how to grow their own food, and how interesting and fun that can be. I hope you enjoyed all these experiments you were doing. I mean, did you ever grow produce before, grow vegetables at home hydroponically, or was this whole experience new?
Mostly we did in the classroom. We had a really nice facility at Iowa State for that, but I never really, once I knew like how it was kind of done commercially, I always wanted to kind of experiment. And once I had the opportunity to do this project, I was all in, and just starting right away on what kind of things to try, and just reading all these DIY things and what you guys are posting really kind of helped drive me to get where it ended up. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed doing that. I kind of miss it, my setup I had in my previous apartment. So in the future, I kind of need to set up something again. It'd be nice to have a little lab to keep growing.
That's cool. Well, so what's your one last question? What's your vision for the future of agriculture in 10 years? What do you think it's really going to be like in this country or globally?
Yeah.
What are some of the ideas that you think about? What's that going to be like?
Yeah, that is pretty hard to predict. Yeah, because initially trying to forecast the space, I do notice it comes up more with a lot of the failures, but I think it's just the progress. A lot of in the indoor technologies. Personally, though, I think a lot of it, I'm more on in line for using more of our natural lighting, just the use of energy that take some of these places that I would be more game for. I think a more increase of greenhouses is definitely on the rise from what I've talked to some different vendors. There's growing more greenhouses near cities. It seemed to be kind of trending that I could see, but I think definitely, I mean, people keep at it, trying some different techniques in the indoor space. But personally, I could see just some more greenhouses, or yeah, at least for the indoor space. The outdoor space, I think, is pretty interesting with some of the robotics going on. Is what I think would be another area. That was another project I could have looked into, but I just kept this route. But I think that is actually probably almost a bigger space people are getting into, but both equally really important. And I'm looking forward to seeing what other people come up with in this area.
So you're going to do some other work that's not really ag related. Do you see yourself eventually coming back to this industry, whether it's with this idea or another one?
Yeah, in the future, I definitely see myself being in this space. I'm an agricultural engineer as well, aside from industrial designer. So this is kind of always part of me, and probably long term, I'll definitely get back around into this area. I mean, I'm definitely going to keep up some things on the side as hobbies and see how they kind of come about. This is just the job market in general right now is like not super, not a ton of openings in this space since it's just starting to grow. So hopefully some different things open up in the future for that as well.
That's amazing. I mean, what a talented individual you are. I'm so excited to watch where you're going to be. I hope that after some people watch this, they reach out to you. Who knows, you might be getting some interesting opportunities coming your way. Always looking to promote exciting talent and ideas on Agritecture. Andrew, I really want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for following the blog. That's exactly what it's about, is about inspiring people like yourself to choose to tackle these great challenges in food security and urban agriculture. So really want to keep in touch with you and wish you all the best with that. I just want to give a short plug to NYC AgTech Week. This topic of growing food at home is a big one. And we're going to have Dan Nelson, who's another enthusiast, looking at this problem. He's going to be hosting an event here at our Agritecture HQ on September 17th. That's the second day. Oh, sorry, actually, that's incorrect. September 20th, the Wednesday, during AgTech Week. And you can learn more about that at nycagtechweek2017.eventbrite.com. If you want to learn more about Andrew and his work, we're linking to his profile and his portfolio in the About section of this video and on the blog post. Thank you for following agritecture.com. Thank you, Andrew, for your time, and keep following and keep growing, everyone.
Thanks, Henry. See you later.
See ya.